Arts and Entertainment presents Clear as a Bell, the story of film pioneer Siegmund Lubin.
Spectators gathered. As cameramen waited for their cue to roll, the director cried action, and two great locomotives picked up speed and hurtled towards their fiery rendezvous. This brief train wreck sequence, which cost over $25,000 to shoot, is from one of nearly 5,000 films produced between 1897 and 1916 by the Lubin Film Company, a Philadelphia-based motion picture firm that was once one of the largest in the world. In 1914, when it was made, it was a bold statement of one pioneer's faith in the prosperous future of the industry he had helped to create. His name was Siegmund Lubin. To fellow veterans of the film business, he was better known as Pop. Lubin Studios in North Philadelphia and at Bettswood near Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, were already world famous, highly sophisticated film production centers when Hollywood was still a quiet outpost. And Hollywood's legendary tycoons had not yet begun their rise to wealth and power when Lubin was being hailed as the king of the movies. He commanded an empire that included studios across the United States, which employed nearly 2,000 actors, writers, directors, and technicians, producing popular features that drew crowds of moviegoers to the theaters of America and Europe. It had not always been so for Lubin, a German Jewish immigrant who came to America in 1876 with little more than a Heidelberg degree and high hopes. After several years as a traveling peddler, he settled in Philadelphia and opened the optical shop that would soon become the headquarters of S. Lubin, world's largest manufacturer of life motion pictures. The first projected movies were visual assaults, the images often peeled off. They flickered, they broke, and in an age when the film was highly flammable, they even caught fire. The subjects weren't exactly scintillating either. One of Lubin's first films in 1896 was of his daughters having a pillow fight. Small wonder that most sensible people, including Thomas Edison, who was popularly credited as their inventor, dismissed the flickers as a flash in the pan. Lubin knew better. Audiences were intrigued by these pictures that moved. If those pictures could only be made to move smoothly, if they could only be clearer, if they could be made to tell a story, Pop knew there were fortunes to be made from the nickels and dimes of immigrants, low-income factory workers, farmers, and children looking for a cheap, undemanding entertainment. From flying feathers, Pop quickly moved on to more popular material, a passion play, and prize fights. Lubin's recreations of prize fights quickly became a big hit. Filming on the rooftop studio Pop rented on Arch Street in Philadelphia's red light district was always an adventure. To create proper ringside atmosphere, Pop handed out hundreds of $1 bills for the extras to bet. It wasn't unusual for several hundred screaming spectators to jam the studio and surrounding rooftops. Routine raids by the Philadelphia Fire Department only added to the authenticity. These early efforts were exhibited amid the waxworks and other amusements of a Barnum-esque emporium known as Brandenburg's Dime Museum. In addition to films, Lubin also perfected, produced, and sold his own patented projector. He called it the Cinemagraph, the marvel of the century. So simple, even a child can operate it. Not content with merely producing and distributing films and equipment, Lubin became an exhibitor, too. Beginning in 1899, with what may be the first theater ever built especially for the movies, he soon established a chain of over 100 theaters along the East Coast. It was becoming apparent that life motion pictures was here to stay, a fact not lost to Thomas Edison, who claimed exclusive right to make and sell motion picture films and equipment. Edison warned, and then in 1898 he filed suit against Lubin, thus firing the first shots in a 10-year legal battle. During these years, Pop continued to build his reputation as a distributor and was fast becoming known as the best pirate in the business. He's known to have virtually remade several films scene for scene and shot for shot. Lubin continued to produce hundreds of popular little films, treating audiences to scenes of patriotism, true love, comedy, and of course, the chase. Some of Lubin's best chases of all took place behind the scenes. Pop continued to ignore Edison's warnings and threats. In exasperation, the Edison Company began sending detectives and thugs to disrupt filming. But Lubin's decoy cast and camera crew were always ready to lead them on a merry chase through Fairmount Park, leaving the real film crew free to work unmolested in one of Lubin's clandestine locations. Finally, Edison, Lubin, and other major film producers called a truce. In December of 1908, the Motion Picture Patent Company, better known as the Trust, was formed. A company whose members would virtually monopolize the film industry for the next 5 years. They made an unlikely group of partners: the eccentric Edison, Biograph's financier Jeremiah Kennedy, Colonel Selig, Vitagraph's flamboyant pop rock, and Siegmund Lubin, perhaps the most colorful character of all. At 6'3", Pop was an imposing figure. An onion-headed giant with one white eye was one employee's vivid description of Lubin, who lost the sight of one eye in a childhood accident. His thick German accent and gift for humorous storytelling made him a popular raconteur, and probably the only film pioneer ever offered a contract as a vaudevillian comedian. This image has helped to obscure the fact that Lubin was also a highly educated, philosophical individual who combined technical genius with a cosmopolitan view of the movie's place in world history. Lubin created a film empire which was the reflection of his own complexity. The large new glass studio that Lubin opened in 1910 at 20th and Indiana Avenue in Philadelphia boasted one of the most powerful indoor lighting systems in the world. The impressive technical facilities also included laboratories, editing rooms, and a machine shop where Lubin cameras and projectors were made. Here, Lubin films, already recognized throughout the industry for their production values, technical sophistication, and sharp images, now gave new meaning to the company motto, clear as a bell. At Lubinville, as the studio came to be called, as many as 5 different films could be shot simultaneously. This film, made at the Peerless World Company studio in New Jersey, neither as large or as sophisticated as Lubin's, clearly shows what movie making was once like at Lubinville. At a silent film studio, there was no such thing as quiet on the set. Amid the noise of sets under construction, scenery on the move, cameras clattering, directors directing, and other distractions, actors tried to act. It wasn't easy in an atmosphere where tender love scenes could often be filmed alongside barroom brawls. A child actor, Albert Hackett, who would become a Pulitzer Prize-winning dramatist and noted screenwriter, talks about his early years with the Lubin Film Company.
I don't remember working very much. Children's parts had not come along so much later. When we started, we did several pictures in a row. What they were, I can't remember, except the one thing called A Spoiled Child. And it was about 2 boys. And there was a great discussion as to which child was spoiled. And I was I played this spoiled child, and I thought it was bad casting because I was sure my brother was the one that was spoiled.
Clear as a Bell will continue. We return to Clear as a Bell.
In 1912, Lubin purchased Bettswood near historic Valley Forge and transformed the former home of brewer John Betts into a vast 500-acre studio estate, which became world-renowned for its scenic beauty and the state-of-the-art technology of its air-conditioned automated labs. For employees, their years at Bettswood were a magic time they would always remember.
And no one had to learn lines or anything. The thought they just went on, and they didn't hang on words at all. And if anybody said anything important, that was when they stopped in the cutting and put that title in there, whatever it was, and then so that was really all the editing that was done. It was done in the cutting room, and everybody was always questioning of how the story should be told, whether it should be told a very intimate way or whatever. And Mr. Lubin, the invitation that I heard around was Mr. Lubin said, no big figures, and that no big figures meant no close-ups to him. And he didn't like that. He thought that everything, once you started with people being a certain height and a certain size, then you came in and they became big for you. He thought there was a distortion and thought it ruined the film for him. So against his dictum, they did put close-ups in, which he could not stand because he thought it was, but it was very strange that everybody was still thought the pictures were in their infancy and it was wide open for any interpretation you wanted to give it.
This $2 million complex, once described as a director's paradise, could be made to look like any place in the world. The Lubin mansion easily doubled as a European palace. Along its 2 miles of riverfront, for one of the first films to feature the proverbial cast of thousands, Bettswood became the battlefields of Shiloh. With the addition of circus animals, it became a carnival. Lubin introduced many names and faces to the world through his films. Arthur Johnson, Florence Lawrence, Ethel Clayton, Harry Myers, and Ormy Hawley are but a few. Here, comedian Marie Dressler clowned for Lubin's cameras, and the notorious Evelyn Nesbit Thaw, focus of the ragtime era's juiciest scandal, starred in Threads of Destiny. When The Squaw Man, Hollywood's first feature film, proved to be unviewable, it was to Lubin at Bettswood that the desperate movie makers Cecil B. DeMille, Samuel Goldwyn, and Jesse Lasky, the future founders of Paramount Pictures, came to save the film. Here, too, East met West as rail cars of Longhorns and Wild Broncs were shipped in from Wyoming for Lubin's Eastern Westerns. Cowboys lived on the estate and excited the imaginations of local residents and actors alike.
It was so exciting to meet cowboys, and suddenly one day they put me on a train to send me back to Philadelphia and to come back the next day on location. And I got on the train one side and got off on the other and stayed hidden until the train went, and I followed the cowboys where they were living. They were living in a boathouse on the river there, and finally, when they were safely in there, I appeared, and so they were surprised to see me, but I had a wonderful night listening to the cowboys talk about where they'd been and things like that.
One of those cowboys, Harry Webb, was the real McCoy. For Webb, a former Rough Rider with the Buffalo Bill Show, Bettswood was the scene of many memorable adventures as a Lubin cowboy actor and stuntman.
Some of the cowboys had come up from the Lubin Picture Company, and they needed cowboys for the picture. Well, I was the only cowboy there was in the whole goddamn picture. But I got tired of that after a couple of years. The hell with that make-believe stuff. You know, there wasn't any such thing as real scenarios then.
Yeah.
And they'd just take a piece out of a magazine. Some actor would read it overnight and says, hey, that'll make a big picture. And the director say, yeah, well, by gosh, we'll make that. Well, you just make the picture of it. There wasn't any plagiarism laws or anything else. So do as you pleased, everybody.
Clear as a Bell will continue. We return to Clear as a Bell.
As Lubin's empire expanded still further, Bettswood and Lubinville became the hub of a network of studios and traveling companies that enabled Pop to release films at the dizzying rate of more than a picture a day. At Lubin's Los Angeles studio, veteran Hollywood director Henry King made his film debut as an actor in Mexican westerns. Movie history was made in 1913 at the Jacksonville, Florida studio, when a young bystander named Oliver Hardy joined Lubin's comedy company. For the next 2 years, Hardy practiced his craft, comedy, under the able direction of Lubin's boy director, Arthur Hoteling. Many of Lubin's strangest and most respected films were shot on location in the Southwest by a colorful and rather mysterious figure known to audiences around the world as Romaine Fielding. Often joining a streak of mysticism to his keen powers of psychological observation, Fielding produced a remarkable series of films that explored the uncharted regions of the human mind. When he wrote, produced, directed, and played the only 2 roles in The Toll of Fear, the unusual subject and daring treatment of this famous one-man film took the industry by storm. The authenticity of his westerns earned him the title, the man who put real in realism. From an imaginary invasion of Newport, Rhode Island, to love and war in Mexico and places in between. From high society to a look at life as it's lived in the lower depths, the end came suddenly. On June 13th, 1914, a massive film vault explosion destroyed the master negatives of every film Lubin had produced. 2 months later, the outbreak of World War I cut off the important foreign markets for Lubin's films. Soon, the dissolution of the motion picture patent company would cost him millions of dollars and his health. On September 1st, 1917, the cameras stopped, and the Lubin Film Company closed its doors. Of Lubin's hundreds of players, some would fade. Arthur Johnson and Florence Lawrence, the movie's first romantic team, were fated to become 2 of the star system's first tragic casualties. Ormy Hawley, who went on to co-star with Valentino and the great Caruso, retired into obscurity. Others continued to light up the screen. Ethel Clayton became a popular Paramount star. And at Warner Brothers, Hardy Allen Hale became Errol Flynn's companion in swashbuckling. Harry Myers will always shine as Charlie Chaplin's friend, the eccentric millionaire in City Lights. Oliver Hardy's future would bring him a partner, Stan Laurel, and lasting fame. Lubin, the man who built a multi-million-dollar international film empire from what had been mere scientific curiosity, spent his last years tinkering with radios. He returned to his optical shop where it all began. And in 1923, newspapers quietly noted the passing of a pioneer. The movies had gone to Hollywood, where Cecil B. DeMille, who owed his career to Lubin, was finishing the first million-dollar spectacle called The 10 Commandments. And audiences continued to enjoy an infant industry. The first mass entertainment continued to grow into a multi-million-dollar business that we still enjoy today. And not much has changed from those early days, except maybe budgets and the nickel it cost to travel to another place and time.